Good Saturday morning. Welcome into Weekend Recharge. I'm LaRosa.
And I'm Paul Goodlow. Whether you're heading out for some small business Saturday shopping or perhaps you're starting that long trip back home from Grandma's house, we got your forecast.
A lot of things happening, so let's get right to it. Let's get you that snapshot, the big picture of all the big stories that we're covering for you today. None bigger than the huge heat story that is taking over across the country, but we do have some inclement weather that will absolutely slow down travel. I'm talking to you across the west where it's the rain and eventually the wind. We'll talk about some of those wind advisories and what those gusts could do to travel. We also have this front coming through. Wouldn't know too much about it though, as it's only going to kind of keep our temperatures in check in some places. Otherwise, it is all about the above average temperatures across parts of the west. We'll show you how that will expand as we get and approach December.
Of the country, Maria, it is not feeling like anything like Christmas. So, right. I mean, almost late summer-like weather.
Maybe if you delayed closing your pool, you'd be in good shape today, right? Because you take a look at Dallas and you've got all the sunshine. Absolutely gorgeous. If you want a taste of winter, though, head to America's largest indoor Christmas tree at the Galleria in Dallas, right? It's going to be a great day outdoors, too. Sunny and plenty of warmth. So that is definitely the story across the plains. And we have a lot of company with us, right? 220 million of us with highs above average. And it really would be easier to talk about who's not seeing above average temperatures. There's so many places, right? High pressure remains in control. This is probably a very familiar map to you now, as we've been talking about this for at least the last week. And the result is seeing those temperatures 15 to 30 degrees above average. What that high pressure really does is doesn't allow this cold air intrusion at all. It is this big dome. It's just blocking everything. And that includes wet weather, too. We're not seeing that. So it's not only warm, but it's also dry. If you think about what's happening in our heartland, it is harvest time. And everything's just about harvested, but we're starting to prep for things like winter wheat and you know, preparing the fields for that. So that could also be some bad news, too, with it being so dry. With that said, if you do have outdoor plans, it will be comfortable. 75 in Dallas today, 80 degrees in Houston, 64 in Oklahoma City. Tomorrow, more of the same. We're up at 72 in Dodge City, Kansas City, up to 62 degrees. You see some of that cooler air trying to work its way in. It doesn't get to the central and southern plains. It's the Midwest and the Northeast that may get a little bit of that reality check. So you look at the trend. It says it all. Oklahoma City, average high 58 degrees. We are well above it. Our cool down, at least in this extended forecast, comes Wednesday with a high of 61, which is still above average. And you get to a city like Dallas, too. Average high this time of year, 63 degrees. Your cool down into the 60s comes Wednesday, but here, too, still well above average, and you can see just how dry it is. So we wanted to dig deeper into why it's so warm across such a big storm system that'll be pushing into the west and Pacific Northwest. That means more rain and wind for you. So a wet time of it for today and actually part of the weekend, the rest of the weekend as well. So we'll time that out for you. And of course, we've got some great travel weather in between, but also looking at more warmth, 10, 20 plus degrees above average for so many. And we'll see how that migrates off to the east, where right now the Midwest and the Northeast relatively cool. We'll talk about the up and down temperature story over the next couple days in just a bit. Paul?
Not feeling cool right now across much of the southern plains, even Texas.
You know, I think 80 degrees, there's no way you can say that's cool. I mean, maybe relative to like 90, but that's what we have in a lot of places across the southern plains, including Houston. We're looking live right now. It's a cool start, but it's going to be a warm day. Temperatures, again, reaching into the 80s, and that sunshine certainly helping that along. That really is the story across this region, and it has been now. If you are heading out, you're joining a lot of company in the warmth, right? 220 million of us looking at highs above average. And you see where that goes, the southwest, the northern plains, all the way, again, into the northeast and New England. That's out ahead of that cold front. The reason we've seen this stretch is this strong high pressure, upper level high, remains in control. So it really is absolutely in control. If it moves, then maybe we could get a hint of some change, but it's just there. So we continue to see the above average temperatures. You're talking 10 to 20 degrees above. You're going to see some record potential here. We've got 72 in Midland, 75 in Dallas, 80 today in Houston. Tomorrow, you've got 72 in Amarillo, 71 in Midland. We're still into the 70s, Dodge City, into the 60s from Oklahoma City to Kansas City, but Houston now into the 70s. More of the same on Monday. So you get the idea that while we may not be seeing temperatures soar into the 90s, we are still going to remain above average. I mean, 81 degrees Amarillo here as we approach December. Really, really crazy. But look at the trend and you get the idea. Oklahoma City, here's your average high, 58 degrees. So any bit of the cool down that we see in this forecast coming Wednesday, you're still above average, and that high of 61. Dallas for you, same story. Average high is 63. We do get a little dip here come Wednesday. But again, that dip is above average at 67 degrees by Wednesday. And notice the stretch, it is incredibly dry. Again, another sort of side effect of that dominant high pressure. You're not getting the colder air in and you're not getting the wetter weather in as well. So let's dig deeper into some of these details, why it's so begs to be answered. Where's the cold to make the snow? And are we stuck with this for the whole winter?
No, but the first week of December looks pretty warm across much of the eastern two-thirds of the country. The cold is in the west. That's to start you off in December. It does look like it's going to turn around a little bit, get colder in the east as we head toward the middle of the month. But let's look now for December, January, February as an aggregate, not a week-to-week thing, but overall, when you look back on this upcoming Jan, Feb, what is it going to be like? Well, most of the models suggest something like that.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's a consensus, right? I would say nearly all of them say relatively warmer conditions than average across the east and south and parts of the west as well, with some belows in the north. But it's kind of a warm-ish look to it, and that's what most of them are saying.
But, you know, it's fun, especially now at this point of the season, to look at all the variables and all of the forecasts. And you're saying, you know, snowpack plays a huge part in those long-term forecasts, but not necessarily just in North America.
That's exactly right. Snowpack does account for changes in your local climate on a day-to-day basis, but for seasonal forecasting, some folks look over at the snowpack on the other side of the world because there's some correlation between high snowpack here in Siberia and subsequent, like months down the road, impacts to the jet stream over North America. Very complicated to explain it. I won't do that here, but there's some decent science that shows that there is some relationship there.
Okay, so this graphic says it's above average snowpack right now, this time of year. What would that potentially mean for us? Okay.
Yeah, right. Assuming this is a one-to-one correlation, which is not,
right.
It sort of suggests that, you know, maybe it would be colder than average conditions here. But if it were me, I'd go with the consensus rather than the outlier.
But it's fun to kind of
Let's see the battle between these guys. Heat and cold miser. Do we have them?